other things as well, including what's going on in the United States of America. Let's have a look at the president and what he said a little while ago.
You're okay. You're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations.
Yeah.
He's had the vaccinations, and now he's got COVID. Let's talk to Erol Morkoc. Erol, a very good morning to you. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Not at all. I've seen various little clips of Joe Biden over the course of the last 24 hours. One of them was when he was in Jerusalem, where he appeared to be coughing and spluttering while he was trying to answer a question. He didn't look at all well. He's now got COVID. We're told he's fine, and he's carrying on with his duties. But obviously it makes him look a bit daft there, saying, well, if you get these vaccines, you're not going to get COVID.
You know, exactly. And one thing to point out, we all want to take a moment and say we hope the president gets better from the Republican Party all around. With that said, he probably had COVID, it seemed like, when he was in Jerusalem. I'm not here to speculate, but, the incubation period and whatnot. But, he put his foot in his mouth. He basically said this was a pandemic of the unvaccinated. Yeah. If you get this vaccine, full stop, you will not get COVID. This further erodes the trust in the executive branch. There was no need to make a bombastic 100% mission accomplished claim. It wasn't necessary. I think the one thing we can take away from George W. Bush is you don't prematurely declare things to be completely victory beforehand. And so now he's just further putting his foot in his mouth. He's further getting behind the ball to the American people, and his approval ratings are indicative of that.
Yeah, I mean, his approval ratings could not be worse. I mean, the question, I suppose, that is now being asked an awful lot is he going to see out the end of his term, not because of any necessarily health problems, but just competence problems? Will, Kamala Harris eventually be asked to take over?
That's a growing question. You saw the video, of course, of the vice president watching him take off for Walter Reed. She looked very grim at the prospect of potentially taking over. I will say, I don't think anybody in the country wants that. Republicans as well. I mean, Kamala Harris is a more ineffectual person than Joe Biden, if that can be possibly done. With that said, it does look like maybe if they invoke the 26th Amendment, if they try to remove him after the midterms for incompetence, dereliction of duty, that's when you could see her put into that role, unless it was a double impeachment, of course.
Yes, absolutely right. Speaking of which, we've been watching this morning the congressional hearings from last night, in which Donald Trump has been said to have not really rebuked the mob enough. He chose not to act, says Adam Kinzinger, one of two Republicans in the Democratic-led committee. I mean, looking at it from this side of the Atlantic, it seems as though America's kind of deliberately dragging this thing out. What's your view of that?
Well, they are. I mean, the Democrat Party certainly, and Adam Kissinger is basically a Democrat for all intents and purposes. And Liz Cheney, these sort of people who are on their way out of the Republican Party. This is their last chance to smear Trump's name before he recasts his ballot for his candidacy. There just isn't a lot of people who aren't already hardcore believers in that January 6th insurrection narrative who are watching this. I mean, frankly, their viewership's terrible. Tonight they had to put it in prime time, but they had the Dodgers and the Giants game on American baseball, and that beat the ratings tonight. So nobody's watching the darn thing. Even if you were interested, no one cares.
Well, this is it. I mean, I said this to somebody on a show last night that, there's talk of the Parliamentary Standards Committee looking into further whether Boris Johnson misled Parliament. There's already been one investigation into that, and it was ruled that he didn't do it deliberately. And I said the danger that the Tory party will have and the danger that parliamentary organisations will have is if you go after an individual like Donald Trump or Boris Johnson in this kind of what seems to me to be particularly personal way, the voters don't really like it. The voters don't really forgive you for doing that. Even if you don't like Donald Trump, unless you're one of these crazed Democrats, you don't really want to just continue to kind of go after him to the ends of the earth.
You would think, but the Democrat Party has a huge history of overplaying their hands to the point of almost foolishness. You have Trump reinserting himself into the discourse slowly. I mean, they tried to wipe the slate clean, basically wipe him off social media. Now with Truth Social, he's making his posts there. They're making it from there into other mediums. So their ability to shut him down and wipe him out, it's just not possible. They're behind the ball, and they're not focusing on what they could do, which is offering a plan to the American people that will get us out of this impending recession, this malaise, all of these things. Instead of that, they're looking backwards and saying, oh, Donald Trump was 18 minutes late based on our calculation of the bell curve of when you should make a phone call to a certain it's just partisan semantics, and the people are sick of it.
Well, they already tried to impeach him, didn't they? And they didn't. It didn't work. So, surely most Americans who are not particularly party political would just say, can we just get on with fixing the economy, making it possible for me to fill up my car with gas without having to take out a second mortgage, and make life better?
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's those little things, the energy independence that Trump offered them, the tax cuts, these things that gave them probably the golden age in modern economic history. They're now looking at the current situation and saying, hey, we didn't need you to break everything. So it's certainly a situation that the Republican Party can capitalize on. And if you look at moderates, who are probably the more important category, I mean, Biden's approval rating is in the 20s, 20% range there. Right. I mean, that's nothing. That's a aberration.
And is there any suggestion yet that there is going to be an emerging Democrat who could run against Donald Trump if he chooses to run?
There always is. To be honest, just because of the polarized nature of this country, there is always going to be a viable competitor, especially in this upcoming election, on paper, like statistically, to win an election. Whether or not that person would represent the country, as we see with Joe Biden, is different. If somehow they can run another shadow campaign with a different candidate, maybe Pete Buttigieg, he just hasn't been successful as transportation secretary, does really poorly. Kamala Harris, no chance. Gavin Newsom, no real chance because he's California politics. They'd have to go for some maybe moderate, middle-of-the-road person, and the left-wing faction of their party ostracizes, demonizes, and basically banishes anybody who doesn't agree with far left Green New Deal or transsexual library story time. And if you don't agree with that, you're out. Right. And you can't. There's no.
And I've been reading quite a bit lately about Ron DeSantis as well, the Florida governor, as a possible contender for the Republican nomination. Is there a body of the hall that might support him rather than Donald Trump? There's
a strong people who look at it in a maybe a more statistical way might look and say, what if we ran this election 100 times? Trump might win 57, but DeSantis might win 65. Yeah. But in the end, as we saw, it comes down to election day. Donald Trump won in 2016, basically in the last 3 days of that election by, rising above any other candidate there. And, that individual thing, it's Donald Trump's choice if he wants to step back and be kingmaker. And I think a DeSantis-Trump ticket would be very powerful. Yeah. I don't know if DeSantis wants that, though.
Right. It does look that way. Fascinating stuff. Erol, thanks very much indeed. Erol Morkoc there, Republicans Overseas, a spokesman on the two stories from the US today, which one overnight that Donald Trump is once again being accused of not acting fast enough to stop the Capitol riots back on January the 6th after he lost the election. And second of all, of course, that now Joe Biden, the President of the United States of America, has got COVID. Supposedly he's fine and he's carrying on with his duties, but we'll keep you updated on all of that as time goes on. Let's talk now, though, to some of you.